Oh.
Is that this week's milk bill?
I said, give that to,
I know,
give
look,
that
matching
to Clare on
caps.
the
Do you
way
want
in.
to wear your caps? You can both wear your caps if you like.
No, I don't like people to know I'm bald.
Don't you?
You've started off badly with that one, then.
I know.
I tell you what, I have not yet done the sort of derivation of my surname, but I'm pretty sure there's plenty of my
of
family.
course,
Exactly.
of
Have to be. And also, I shared with the audience last night, and probably shouldn't have done that, when I was at school studying for exams, I used to wear a thinking hat. And so when the question came from the audience, what do you wear when you write? I don't actually now, but that's the only thing.
A thinking cap?
Yeah, I used to wear a cap
Literally.
that keep my brains in, I thought. And I was like 17. It's not like I was 6. Anyway, questions from our wonderful audience. And I don't know, why is your Twitter handle @Prodnose?
Prodnose. Well, I think we've got this in common. I hope we still have. We don't have mobile phones.
That's right. No, I don't have mobile
Paul
phone.
and I are the only two people who don't have mobile phones. We don't, you know,
Robert
socialise.
Elms doesn't have one either.
Robert Elms. But
He told
people
me,
say to me, can I have your number? And I'll say, do you know what? I don't have a phone. And in this game, they say, I promise I won't give it to anyone. I say, I really don't. And I always say, the only other person is Paul Merton. I always say that because we don't.
No.
And it's not an affectation. I have no philosophy behind it, but I can't think of anything worse than always being contactable. And I don't. People buy them for us. I know. Anyway, but I have a computer. I don't think you do have a computer,
No.
do you? I do. I like computer stuff.
I'm looking at the pencil a bit dubiously.
And so I'm not Facebook, I'm not any of that, but Twitter, 2 or 3 people, friends of mine, said it's because we was always forever emailing each other. And they said, go on Twitter, you can do that. And so I did, and I've never liked to say my own name, which is odd. On the radio, I was called Candyman. I just think it all makes my toes curl when you hear people going, you're listening to, all right, get over, you know, play the record. I can talk, but I don't like Samona. So I thought, I'm going to, you know, the real Danny Baker, which is what you're supposed to do, and register yourself. Prodnose, one of my favourite authors, and the only real, the what?
J.B. Morton?
Yes, the only real influence on Spike Milligan is J.B. Morton, Beachcomber, who wrote the most extraordinary comedy, the most wonderful Flights of Fancy, where you can see where the goons came from. Wrote a column in the Daily Express for 40 years, 50 years?
It was something like 50, I think, yeah.
And, but he had this one character called Prodnose, who was a really irritating person who popped up to say things nobody wants to hear. And it's a slim conceit, but I didn't know it would take off like Prodnose has, and I am @Prodnose. So Prodnose was really just a slight and in-joke for someone who's a bit of a nuisance. And that's
Very good. Well, that makes perfect sense.
There you go.
Right, Paul, this is part question, part challenge. I will time it. If you had just a minute to talk about your life, how would you summarise it? 3, 2, 1, go.
Well, normally I'd get some kind of warning that I was talking about just a minute earlier on, and I would say that my life is the subject which I'm allowed to repeat. This would be quite boring, because already I've done 50 seconds, not even anywhere near the subject in kind, but I've repeated the subject 3 times now. But anyway, no, I can't actually.
You're only thinking time. We weren't going to get you on repetition.
No,
because it's just the time.
It's...
Anyway, we did do 35 minutes before, and he was jolly good on his life. Danny, this is one of your... this is like the dance
Who's going to win the cup?
What's the collective noun for a group of zebras?
Do what, mate?
What's the collective noun for a group of zebras, or zebras, however
you...
Oh, I don't... the idea that I know, like, QI, I don't. I mean, I manufacture stacks of stuff that I... you know, people say, how did you know that? I say, well, I made it up. But what I can do, and what and Paul is more expert at, is hearing something from that and hijacking it to make it sound like you know what it is. So, yes, you see, I'm not answering the question, but I'll say, if I was on the radio now, what you do, you hear the word zebras and you say, I'll tell you what, never mind about the collective noun, the name of zebras, don't you worry about that. Why don't you see zebras being ridden? They're horses. You never see anyone on a zebra. If you go onto Google, there are no photographs.
But the sad thing is, I know the answer to that, because obviously it's a horse-related question.
Well, even so, but to hijack
their backs are made of paper.
But their backs.
You see, there's the both
stripy paper.
The stripy paper.
From what could be, with all respect, a dry question of general knowledge, we would hijack and say, never mind about the real answer, here's something you can say. And zebras you don't see ridden, and now we know it's because their backs are made for paper. And that's how we get away with it, you see.
Very good. Very good.
Trade secrets.
Who would you like, this question for both of you, who would you like to play you in a movie or TV series of
Harry
your
Styles
life?
or One Direction?
Yes, of course.
Do you know, I have a penchant for Julie Andrews.
Do you?
Yeah.
I think she'd be great.
I'm not going to do an audiobook for this one, but I would like to get someone like Nigel Havers to read it.
Exactly.
I was born in Fulham. Son of a tube driver.
Am I older than you? Because we're both 1957, aren't we?
July the 9th for me.
I'm June the 22nd,
Oh,
son.
There we go.
Junior.
Yeah, well, both Cancerians at the same pot there. There you go.
Who are your radio heroes, and would either of you ever run for DG of the BBC?
Oh, well, I think we both agree on the second one. Well, maybe you would.
I don't know, who would you say?
The weird thing is, I never listened to the radio. The radio was never on in our house. People said, oh, you must listen to Kenny Everett. The Goons I learned from LPs. Most of the comedy on Hancock from LPs. I was never a radio listener. And thank God, because when I came to do radio, I took in a big box of records, and because they weren't paying much money, and those early shows, and still do, and I thought you just opened up the microphone and made stuff up and talked to people and had a conversation. I've never had a meeting about radio before, during, or after a show ever, and it's led to some crop-ups, but I just thought, I thought that's what people did. I thought you just brought in records and did it, and it's strange, but we never had a car, so there was never a radio on in the car. Two-way family favourites and things like that my mum would listen to, but actually as a radio fan, no, I never did. I was never a radio listener. Now I know, of course, you know, I can make all the right noises and say John Peel, Kenny Everett, but did I listen to him at the time? No, I really didn't.
I mean, there's one thing at the moment, I would say there's a current show, Ed Reardon's Week on Radio 4. It's just absolutely superb and would bear comparison with the greats from any era. It's absolutely wonderful.
See, I love Lisa Tarbuck on a Saturday night, because I just think it's so wonderfully random. And I love, you know, I just love
her
the
brain
way...
goes anywhere. It just jumps around. It's fantastic.
The great benefit, again, that I had is when I was thrown into that maelstrom at GLR, it happened to be that I did Saturday and Sunday, and I was followed on Saturdays by Chris Morris, who couldn't... so I used to do my show, and then Chris Morris used to come and doing that, by the way. And on Sunday, it was Chris Evans. That was his first show. They hated each other, Chris Morris and Chris Evans. I was friends to both of them. But so then when I started, I thought, oh, there's other ways that some people prepare, some people do it different ways. And even though, as I say, I heard it from LPs and stuff, later on, you owe it to yourself to go back and say people like B. Mitchell Reed in America, who taught me so much from an LP called Cruising. You talk fast, and you get in there, and you get out, and you don't bore us, you get to the chorus, and you're not there to appear, you're there to work. Yeah. And if the audience listen to the radio, and, you know, being, you know, vainglorious about it, but I always think in whatever you do, this modern thing about, we're here for you, you tell us what you think. Now, hang on, you're getting paid, you do it. Show me you're doing something I couldn't do. That's all I ever want to hear.
Yeah. This makes me laugh. Is there any sex in your book? Which pages? Having read them both, no.
No, the first one there was.
Yeah.
And for the telly, we've had to age it all up and down and make it less... Because I was knocking around doing stuff, and I hate to say it, at 13, 14. Because I was never one of them I was shy around girls. No, I wasn't. No. I really wasn't. I don't know you, Paul. I weren't. And you know...
I still haven't got to the stage that you were at when you were 14, believe you me.
Well, anyone who's read the first one knows there's a story about being round me nans where I was supposed to be feeding the budgerigar.
Yeah, and it's been called a few things in its time, hasn't it? Getting the millet out.
Exactly, yeah.
Rattling the cage.
I know. Stroking the cuttlefish.
Yeah, exactly.
But, so, yes, there is in mind.
Spilling trill all over. Well, anyway, we've been there.
It'll made me bounce with joy. But
yes.
Yes, there is in mind, but I only because I was fed up of reading the same generic stuff about, I was always awkward around girls, and that. I never was, and my friends on the estate were all girls. And terrible thing is, but there's made a record show you said it for, I was quite a good-looking kid. Look, behold the ruins of a once great beauty. Again, I may have been too much my father's child there.
David Essex's brother.
David Essex's brother.
That's
well
right.
done, Paul. Thank you. Yeah, that's right.
Question for Paul: where do you buy your shirts? I hope you don't buy them. I mean, not that. Sorry, that sounded wrong.
You can around the back of Skips, back of hotels. I don't know where this one's from. Probably John Lewis, something like that. But I don't know. I'm not very. I'm dressed nicely today, but my wife's thrown clothes at me which fit and match.
Dressed.
You know, and dressed. So yeah, I don't know. I'm afraid.
Yes.
Scandinavia is the right answer.
Always. And you both got great shoes, can I say?
Oh, this is true. Yes,
shoes.
yes, absolutely.
Interesting shoes, and indeed sensible to run if there was a fire. Red sauce or brown or none? Who asked that question? Lots of people. You did that back there, and you did as well. Yeah. I'll tell you something that Danny was doing Red Sauce, Brown Sauce or None with Willie Carson, my old mucker on the BBC, who I adored working with and who, by the way, I do write about in my book, in case you need to know. Anyway, thanks. And Willie's on the phone to Danny doing it, doing the thing, Red Sauce, Brown Sauce or No Sauce, in our compound at Epsom on Derby Day. And I've gone over to the breakfast, you know, we get a nice breakfast when we're on OBs. And I come over to Willie, not knowing what he's doing. I said, what do you want in your sausages? Ketchup, brown sauce or no sauce? To which he goes, that's just what I'm doing. And then says on the air, she's just asked me. He's going, don't tell her.
Things like the sausage sandwich, I mean, well, I kind of had half an idea that had run for about 4 or 5 weeks. I think you've heard it, Paul, but it's simply asking people what they have. Building it up like a quiz and coming up with preposterous questions. Actually started when I used to write TFI Friday for Chris Evans. And we used that, and extraordinarily, funny, we were talking about it in the first part, from Michael Caine come on, and I used to come up, no, really, Michael Caine and Terry Venables. We did it on there twice, and I always thought that's a good thing, but Chris would chuck things away. Come on, let's keep it moving, let's do something new, let's do something new. And just 1 week on there, I like the idea that things can be so dumb, so absolutely banal, they're brilliant. And a lot of radio stops that side of it, and they remain dumb and banal. But if you treat the most ludicrous things with great seriousness, and the key to that is, of course, doing it with great seriousness. I think G.K. Chesterton said, somber is easy. Frivolous is really difficult. Everyone wants to be taken seriously. If you blow that up and say, I don't want to. So the sausage sandwich game, coming up with the questions it's rather like what Paul does so expertly, and I have to do only once a week. On the train, on the Jubilee line to the studio, I trust that the most fatuous questions will occur to us. When you walk out your front door, do you turn left or right if you're going to buy a newspaper, and whatever they are, you know? Do you have one of those grids on the back of your post box for a letter to fall into? Does it fall onto a mat, or don't you have a post box? And so you have to come, and they somehow always occur between Southwark and Bond Street. Because it's rather like my radio shows. I think, well, you're going to have to open the microphones in 11 minutes. You better have something to say. And you find it does. If I sat there the night before and thought, OK, what's a clever question there? And happily, it remains the iron horse of the Saturday broadcasting schedules, and yet there's not an ounce of weight in it.
It's brilliant.
And the player we had today...
I will say, I think I was the only person who ever said marmalade.
Yeah, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to do that. But it's a
marmalade with sausages, delicious.
The question really itself is...
Yeah, really good. And actually, onion marmalade is a nice variation on that. But just marmalade is really good with sausages, not with bacon.
Like anything else, you've no idea why it flies and why it does fly, but God bless it. But yeah, it was originally a little thing on TFI Friday, along with the thing we used to call baby left, baby right, where the baby fell this way or that way, or remains... They won't let us do that on the radio, but yeah, they're very slight. But that's the beauty.
Had alcohol been provided?
Yeah, quite possibly. One for Paul. I know you are a keen aficionado and historian of comedy, and we didn't get on to talk about this actually. We touched on them in passing, but this is actually not to do with the ancient silent comedy. This is your stand-up heroes. Who are your stand-up heroes?
Well, there's a couple. I mean, if we go back to the 1930s, Max Miller was a comic that was a very, very popular comic of the 30s, 40s and 50s. And if you look at his early stuff, he's the first comic really that still feels modern. If you look at George Robey, he was a bit of an older, but if you see his stuff from the same era, it seems very Edwardian, you know, very old hat. Max Miller, he would come on, he'd have the sort of, you know, the floral suit. He'd say, he'd have the big hat, and he'd say, here, I went home the other night. I says to the wife, here, I says, I hear the milkman has made love to every woman in this street bar one. She says, I bet it's that stuck-up cow at number 54. I mean, to me, that's like Shakespeare. I just think that's so... The assumptions of the woman, she says, yeah, I bet it's her. You know what she's like? Yeah, she wouldn't give the milkman a time of day. So he was not special. Alexi Sell, kind of, the Comedy Store opened up in '79 and made it sort of democratic in that anyone could get up on stage and give it a go. And they discovered you were talking about chance in your life, you know, and stuff. Alexi Sell was one of the first guys that walked into the Comedy Store, had never, for an audition, had never been a comic, had done a bit of left-wing theatre, I think. Had never been a stand-up comedian. And I saw his act in 1980, early 1980, when he played Raymond's Revue Bar, like a 50-seater. Only for about 3 weeks did he do this. And it was the most astonishing act you've ever seen in your life. I can't replicate some of it because some of it's too rude. But he took the he had the attitude, this is 1980, I'd never seen a comedian before in this country who didn't care whether the audience liked him or not. He didn't care about that. One of his routines was called Stream of Tastelessness, where every single swear word you can think of was just put next to each other, repeated round and round again as he got angry and angry and angry, not attempting any kind of sense, but just going through F, B, C, D, you know, like this. And, you know, he'd come on stage, he says, you know, it's great being Jewish, you know, because you can go into work and say, I can't come into work tomorrow, it's haka day. I've got to sit in the back garden with a pork pie on my head. You know. He'd had jokes with him, you know. I walk around Stoke Newings and I've got a great big clown's hat and a great big pair of boots. I did fuck all for Mussolini. You know, sorry about the language, but you know, just coming out of nowhere, you know, a reference to Mussolini.
Yeah.
And it was just astonishing. So he sort of kind of, while we were still watching Des O'Connor, you know, Des is fine, you know, but Des is from the 50s. And Alexei was, as soon as I saw him, I thought, well, that kind of comic is sort of, I think the phrase I used in the book is dead in the water. It'll take a while, it'll take a few years, but this is something really new and different. You know?
And actually, he still feels new and different now.
He's incredible. You know, I mean, he's sort of, you've probably heard his analogy many times, you worked in the music press, but for me, I think it's the comedic equivalent of seeing the Sex Pistols in Manchester, where it's like, it just really changed, you know, there's lots of guys, sort of Sex Pistols play, the Smiths and people like that, you know, and it changed, they thought we can get into this. And Alexei was exactly the same thing. You knew that if you could find a stage and get on, you wouldn't be as good as that, but you could be listened to.
Danny, you touched on your dislike of management in the first half of the programme. A question here. Your 2-hour resignation live on air from your weekday BBC London show was highly entertaining listening to. Do you have any regrets?
I missed the show. And the thing is, it was, my wife would kiss him full on the lips because suddenly, things took off. Even the book came out of everything else. And to be honest, financially, it was one of the most smart things I ever did. But the only place, as radio shuts down and down and down, the only place that still, 5 Live still let us do it, but that's 2 hours a week. And there are parameters within that. But the only show that ever said, just come in and make it up. And that was the reason why, in the end, it was got rid of, and the wheels within wheels there. But I miss it like crazy. But would I do the same thing? Absolutely, because I dislike those people. I don't like those people. They're nuisances. They get in the way of any creativity. They're nothing to do with anything. Really, I mean that. And so I do that again. In fact, the firework display before the show was the thing. I actually walked in because I'd been told they'd stop. Hang on. 2 weeks before, when they're going to axe local radio, I was the poster boy for local radio. Axe local radio, you don't get this. But the word weasels was very, very well, and dim bulbs was very well used. And I walked in, and I've not got that in my armoury. I have none of this gossiping in corridors, writing a waspish piece in The Guardian, sending some emails off to people. I'll walk up to you and I say, "Oh, are you? What you do?" And they didn't know what to do. I walked into their office and I said, "You, stop by, I didn't come out here. And, we're thinking about giving you a weekend show." And so Balin Leonard, who used to do the show, said to me after, he said, "I've never seen anyone do that in real life." I said, "What?" He said, "When they said we've got a weekend show," I said, "You kiss that side, you kiss that side," right? This was before it. And I said, and the reason this place is sinking into a miasma of low morale, the reason there's a grey energy over it, the reason no one talks to each other is summed up in the fact that you're staying and I'm going, right? And anyway, it was like Dead Poets Society after. So it was a tremendous Viking funeral. But was it planned? Was it meant to have repercussions? No. Was I asked to do follow-up articles about it? Yes. So it could happen again on next week's 5 Live. You know, it really could. I've never put any store by the idea that what you do, you have this catharsis. You say you and you're a nuisance, blah blah blah, on everything that went on there, and they still let me go on the air because the paralysis in the BBC is such that there were no meeting rooms open to decide what to do with me. So I went on the air. And I hope it wasn't angry. I hope it was funny. But dear Lord, it was a tragedy. It was a real shame. A real shame. And
actually, you write very movingly in the book about, you write very well in the book about not changing yourself to suit other people. And we've all worked, you know,
yeah, but that makes it sound like, oh, you know, I'm one of those bores who says, I say what I think.
No,
but there was no planning in it. And as you, I mean, the worst, terrible thing is, you know, and Paul probably will testify, with a shake of his head. I'm like this. I am overwhelming and bombastic. And you know, and my wife will say, and people say, is he like that indoors? She goes, yeah, he is. And equally, the other side of it is, that is me old man coming out. So I don't see why people who have made a decision about your future hope you're going to abide by the usual terse middle-class rules of saying, well, I'm furious. I'll tell you what I'm on. I've got a few friends who are going to plant some... No, I'll walk up to them, and then it's over, you know? And they're still there, and they've not replaced the show, and so that's fine. But I miss it like crazy.
When was that now? How long ago was that?
3 years ago, 2 years ago, something like that.
Have people moved on that you might be invited back?
Oh, no. Well, you look at it this way, Paul. Here I am, for what, you know, better or worse, one of the better-known Londoners. I've written a book the first book all about London in the 50s and 60s. You know, I hope I can handle myself in an interview. Would they ask us ever to go there? No. And that's fine by me. And every day I walk by, I hope they'll come out. But they won't come out. They won't. They make it. They make sure they look both ways before they come out of the building, and that squares it for me. Yeah. Am I still angry about it? You bet I am. Absolutely angry about it. Are those people still working there? Yes, they are. Is the station any good? No, it ain't.
And just finally, you're going to have to stand up. Vivian and Graham, have you seen our vintage T-shirts in the second row? They say, look at this.
Oh!
And turn around and show,
Turn
around and show the audience
Thank
as well.
you very
Just
much
turn
indeed.
Around. Very good.
Ladies and gentlemen, these are... I'm sorry about this, Paul. These are...
Why have you got David Essex on your T-shirt?
Looks like Mike Reed, to be fair. This self-regarding nonsense. These are T-shirts that were made at various times at the BBC because, you know, the BBC is enormous. You can walk back, you get fired from one bit, walk up a corridor and get hired again by someone else. But the main thing I think the rest of the audience can take from that is your licence fee at work, everyone. Thank you.
And I think the other thing the audience will take away with them is that they would want to spend an awful lot more time in your company. And the best way to do it is to read their books because they're both out now. So Danny Baker, Going Off Alarming, Paul Merton, Only When I Laugh. Thoroughly good reads. You've heard them talk about and tell you some of the stories, but the rest of it is in there. I highly recommend it. And I'd say go for a walk as well.
Yeah! How about that? How about that?
If you've enjoyed this afternoon, then it's entirely due to the guests, but also to Blinkbox Books, who have put it on and whose idea this all was, and who our final show tonight is Caitlin Moran and Kate Moss. So if you have friends, Kate Moss, the author, not the model. Just clarifying that. It's a book thing. I know it's London Fashion Week. The other one was busy. If you've enjoyed it and you think friends of yours might, then do let them know via all your wonderful social media ways because there may just be some tickets left if they're very lucky for this evening. But thank you for coming and thank you most of all to Danny Baker, to
Clare Balding, of course,
and to Paul Merton.
And
thank you very much.
yourselves.
When I was about sort of 4 years old, I wanted to be a comedian. I saw some clowns in a circus, and I was knocked out by the funniness of clowns. And
like when you got shot. Oh, yeah. And so the son of...